Bienvenidas y bienvenidos a nuestro seminario web sobre Mifos. Quisiera agradecer al Centro para la Infraestructura Pública Digital CDPI por su apoyo. Hoy nos acompaña Manuel Aguilera. Manuel nos contará un poco más sobre el trabajo que realizan en el CDPI.
Muchas gracias, Yesenia, y gracias a todo el equipo y todas las personas que están ahí presentes. Me encontré con algunos datos que me parecieron bastante llamativos. El primero es que en nuestra región, en América Latina y el Caribe, cada persona invierte en promedio 5 horas, un poquito más de 5 horas, para cada trámite gubernamental que realiza. Y eso lleva a que en nuestra región, en las personas, en los sectores de menores ingresos, una de cada tres personas alguna vez pagó algún soborno para acceder a servicios públicos. Cuando hablamos de mejorar la eficiencia y la transparencia de los servicios públicos, esto no solo tiene un impacto claro en la economía y además en la vida de las personas, sino que también en la confianza que las personas tenemos en las instituciones públicas, que es otra forma de decir que también fortalece, mejorar la eficiencia de estos servicios, también fortalece la confianza en la democracia misma. Trabajar con gobiernos para mejorar las infraestructuras públicas digitales persigue justamente este objetivo. Y es lo que hacemos desde CDPI. Brindamos asesoría pro bono para todos los gobiernos de la región, además de trabajar también en África eh, y en Asia, justamente para mejorar cuáles son esos bloques fundacionales, esos bloques fundamentales que pueden construir estados más transparentes.
Ahora me gustaría presentarles a los ponentes que nos acompañan en la sesión de hoy. Nos acompaña hoy David Higgins, director de programas de la iniciativa Mifos. A su vez, también nos complace dar la bienvenida a Víctor Romero, es cofundador de Fintegando. Por último, nos complace contar con Edward Cable, presidente y director ejecutivo de la iniciativa Mifos. Y ahora le cedo la palabra a Ed.
Thank you for those introductions, Yesenia. Yeah, so myself, David, and Victor are happy to have this opportunity to share with you today a bit more about the Mifos initiative. So first off, I'm going to start us off with an overview of our organization and the role we play in driving an ecosystem-based approach to advancing last mile financial inclusion. So I'll give a brief look into the history and evolution of our organization, the collection of digital public goods that we maintain, the use cases around digital public infrastructure that those fulfill, an optimal way of delivering that at scale. And then I'm going to pass it on to Victor to provide a case study on the impact this is having in Mexico already. And then in the second part of our webinar, we're going to give a deeper dive into the digital public goods from a number of perspectives. I'm going to give a brief overview of the technical and functional components of Mifos X, our core banking platform. And then Victor is going to give a brief demo of an implementation of the core banking system for Mexico. And then David is going to showcase the payment orchestration engine we have, along with our deployment tool, Gazelle. And then Victor is going to conclude by sharing a tutorial on installation, and we'll give a closer look at the code base and how you can interact with it. So as I noted earlier, I'm going to focus on our unique approach to helping to advance last mile financial inclusion, which is really centered around our ecosystem and creating a virtuous cycle throughout our community. So we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and our main focus is nurturing and guiding and cultivating the ecosystem of local practitioners as well as global volunteers that collectively contribute to helping deliver digital financial services to the base of the pyramid. So our shared vision of achieving our mission is 3 billion Maries. And Marie, is that on the previous slide, David? Sorry. Yeah, so this is Marie Claire Ayerwanda of Rwanda. And she represents our shared vision of creating a world of 3 billion Maries where these individuals have access to the financial resources to build a better life for themselves and their family. So right now we've collectively reached across our community 65 million individuals, and we have much more to go in accomplishing that goal. So on the next slide, I just want to touch on a few of the key pillars of our approach, which I'll elaborate on in greater detail. But these three pillars are commoditization of the core banking software to help deliver accounts to these last mile financial institutions, enabling a virtuous cycle of innovation, and then creating this ecosystem-based approach through local support providers building on top of the open source. Throughout the years, we've received a number of awards recognizing our leadership in both financial inclusion as well as the open source community. And most recently, Victor is going to talk about one of the awards we received for the project in Mexico, but we'll talk about that on a subsequent slide. So a couple key aspects of our approach is first off, openness. So open source isn't just the only part of openness that is critical to our organization. Openness permeates the entire community So whether it's open source business models to scale the software, an open ecosystem of sharing ideas and knowledge, or open collaboration in business models and community standards, openness is key to helping us achieve this mission of reaching the 3 billion underbanked. And a second key pillar of our approach is this virtuous cycle. So our goal is to have everybody that's using or contributing to the software being on the latest upstream version of the common code base. And that way they can benefit from innovations that come from the entire community. So Paul Ramsey has a nice quote here, which represents this, where you get what you pay for or contribute to the software. Everyone else also gets what you pay for. And then if somebody else in the community also contributes to the upstream, you get that as well. So that's why we fundamentally believe this virtuous cycle of creating this collective cycle of upstream contribution from everybody is a key pillar of how we can achieve our mission. And then one thing that we've coupled with this is also an hourglass architecture approach, which Pramod Sharma likes to highlight. And so this is key in having a core architecture that's quite thin in the middle. And then at the bottom of the hourglass, you enable the community to support and maintain that core. And so we do this by maintaining a set of common primitives for banking and payments that the community can easily maintain, such that common core is relatively thin. And then on the top of the hourglass, we provide a set of APIs that are aligned with interoperability standards, such that the community can rapidly innovate and build solutions for various financial inclusion use cases, which I'll talk about on the subsequent slides. One other approach and one other key aspect of our approach that I want to focus on is this notion of commoditizing the core banking software. So since our inception, we recognize that the functionalities to deliver financial services are relatively common across all markets and across all operational models. So that's why we believe if we can make core banking software a commoditized software, then the community can focus on innovation and where it has the most impact. And the one other aspect of this slide I want to highlight is that although the base of the pyramid is our key social mission and focus, we fundamentally believe that is just the tip of the pyramid in terms of the impact we can achieve as the entire financial services sector can adopt our software and help to transform how we deliver financial services that last mile. So in this ecosystem-based approach, there are a number of key stakeholders ranging from the actual institutions, whether public or private sector, using the software itself, our volunteers and interns, as well as collaboration with other open source projects. But I really want to highlight on this slide the key importance of commercial partners, so those local partners that take the software, support it, and build solutions. So Victor's company, Fintech Jando in Mexico City, represents a good example, and they led all the efforts with the local government institution there in extending the open source while contributing back to it actively. So I won't spend too much on this slide, but just wanted to touch upon a few of the key aspects of the role that we play as a nonprofit. So first off, we aim to steward and enable that ecosystem. So helping to connect the source of users with supply of solutions to help meet their needs. So we do this in a number of manners, but we maintain a directory of partners. We're building out a marketplace of apps and services. And then secondly, we provide the structure and connective tissue to help the community collaborate, both from an actual day-to-day collaboration as well as governance perspective. And so this includes maintaining the online tools, maintaining documentation, helping to host meetings and whatnot. And then thirdly, we act as a steward for the product. So we help to guide a roadmap and a vision and help to ensure that the contributions from the community can flow back upstream in advancing our social mission. And then lastly, we act as a thought leader and advocate, helping to endorse how our open source digital public goods can be used for a wide variety of DPI use cases. And just to elaborate on that a bit more, in terms of the global community collaboration, we do this in a number of manners. So we maintain a number of working groups to help guide the efforts of our volunteers. We regularly host meetups and conferences, and then we're looking to build out a network of local chapters to help bring the virtual collaboration face-to-face as well. And then at the level of the ecosystem, I noted we maintain a partner directory. We have our deployment tool, Gazelle, to automate the ease of deploying the software. And then over time, we're looking to build both an app store as well as marketplace to house the services and solutions built on the open source. And then in terms of acting as a steward for the product, key for us in maintaining a number of digital public goods and also contributing to other open source projects is helping to steward that vision of the product and helping to maintain processes to gather the inputs across the community to go collectively into a roadmap that our ecosystem can then drive forward through this virtuous cycle. And then lastly, around education and advocacy, we aim to be that thought leader I noted before, helping to promote the initiative and awareness of the software. We help to stimulate demand across both the public and private sector. We aim to provide case studies and impact measurements of how our software is having impact locally. And then we look to collaborate with other digital public goods and formulate partnerships to help drive interoperability and advance end-to-end solutions to drive use cases like G2P. And so helping to unify all our efforts is our 2030 vision campaign. This is aligned with the Sustainable Development Goal of no poverty. So our goal by 2030 is to grow our outreach to 500 million clients and to grow the impact of our community on the metrics you see on the slide. So I'm going to talk a little bit now about how we've evolved. So you might have seen on the first slide that we've had our roots for quite some time now. We started out as just a white paper nearly 2 decades ago, originating at the Grameen Foundation at their technology center in Seattle. And so originally our project began as what was known as Microbanking Open Architecture Project, or MOAP, in response to the needs of microfinance institutions to have access to software that they could support locally, but also scale to meet the growth of their operations. So our project was formally adopted within the Grameen Tech Center as Mifos, which originally stood for Microfinance Open Source. And the first generation of our software launched in 2006, and at the time was the world's first web-based open source management information system, or MIS for microfinance. We went through a number of struggles helping to grow that community and helping to unlock that vision of commoditizing the software and building out an ecosystem around it. So that's why in 2011, we led efforts to spin Mifos out as its own separate entity. And that's when we launched generation 2 of our software, Mifos X, in 2013, which is now still active and operational today. And throughout the years subsequently, we've also introduced a number of other digital public goods that we'll talk about in the subsequent slides, including our Payment Hub Enterprise Edition, as well as Gazelle. And just one other look we can take at this evolution is first off, providing this open source web-based MIS for microfinance. And then that evolved to be an API-driven open source core banking platform more broadly for financial inclusion. So not just credit, but savings and transactions as well. And then lastly, providing now a broader application framework for digital financial services as a whole. So I'm going to give a really high-level look right now at the stack of digital public goods that we maintain, and then we'll provide a closer look on the subsequent slides in the second half of our webinar. So our first and key digital public good is Mifos X. That's our core banking platform, which is powered by Apache Fineract. Or you can advance to the next slide, David. So, sorry. Yeah, so Mifos X provides all the functionality any type of financial institution needs to run its operations. So essentially, whatever you need to run a bank, an MFI, a fintech, a mobile wallet provider. So we provide the backend platform Mifos X. We provide our front end staff-facing web app, and then we also provide a Kotlin-based digital field operations app. And then in addition to Mifos X, we also maintain a suite of mobile banking apps for customers. We have a reference mobile banking, as well as mobile wallet app, and we also have a reference open banking fintech app. And then complementing our core banking system is our Payment Hub Enterprise Edition, which acts as an orchestration engine to help facilitate the movement of money. So helping both the government as well as individual financial institutions either orchestrate payment flows or connect into digital payments like instant inclusive payment systems like Mojulu or mobile rails like Mobile Money. And then lastly, our newest product offering, which David will talk more about later, is Gazelle, which helps to bring together all these digital public goods and make them rapidly deployable in a way for governments to easily evaluate how our digital public goods and other ones can help to achieve and implement various use cases for digital public infrastructure. So I want to go back to this concept of commoditization. So we try to position the open source Mifos X core banking platform as a set of open building blocks, which can be used to deliver any type of financial service in any market via any channel through any type of organization. So we call these building blocks, these open source primitives, and they're also available through RESTful APIs based on the Swagger open API formats. And then one other look we can take here is taking a bit more detailed look, but if you see the elements in blue, these are those common upstream elements that compose the core. And then the elements in the pink here are components that are more around the edge, which are used to deliver a full financial services solution. So we'll come back to this notion of core and the edge. but the blue components here are the ones that the community maintains as open source, and then the pink components are what the ecosystem delivers on top as sometimes proprietary solutions, but also could be contributions back to the open source as well. So this is just another view of some of the stack we maintain, but we'll give a closer look, so we can skip on this slide, David. So I just wanted to touch upon a bit of the evolution of the use cases, and then I'll provide a greater focus around those use cases related to last mile financial inclusion and digital public infrastructure. So first and foremost, where we began and where our key focus is around financial inclusion. So this is both digitizing those institutions, delivering financial services last mile, and then once they're digitized, being able to enable them to digitally transform, being able to provide digital channels to their customer, and offer digital and electronic payments to ease convenience. And then the second area in which we've expanded to is around governments in the public sector. So this could be governments offering accounts to their citizens. It could be providing sandboxes to fintechs, but also the primary use case we're focused on is enabling those payment flows, whether it's outbound G2P or inbound P2G. And then where we're seeing a lot of organic adoption over the past several years, and which is very exciting, is around both the banking as well as the fintech space. So beyond just financial inclusion in the base of the pyramid, organically, we've seen a number of private sector institutions of various levels of scale adopt our open source core banking to modernize their operations and also contribute back to this virtuous cycle. So this could be banks, legacy banks, modernizing their infrastructure, brand new neobanks, fintechs, telcos, others looking to offer digital financial services, but doing it on top of this open source commoditized core. So this is just another representation of that widespread organic adoption that we've seen. So on this slide, given our roots in microfinance and joint liability group lending, the software has been widely adopted from a number of fintechs providing lending operations, whether that's online or via mobile, but you can also see a number of larger banks across various markets that have adopted the software and a number of different payment companies for various use cases. But we'll talk about a couple case studies, which helps to bring to bear the impact and where the software is being used to date. So, and this is just another representation of how our ecosystem takes the APIs, and this is on the screen here, represents companies that have built SaaS or cloud-based solutions to offer the software at scale to smaller local financial institutions. So one successful operational model of the ecosystem. And then, you can go to that next slide, David. Thank you. Yeah, so this is just another representation of that core versus edge approach. So once again, in the middle, that's like the Mifos X core in the components. And I'll talk about those specific components on the later slide. But then around that, in order to adopt or deliver a full financial services solution, this is where those pink components are. So this gives the ecosystem the opportunity to innovate on top of the open source and still get value out of this upstream model, but be able to differentiate and create sustainable businesses or build solutions. So now I want to focus on how this software can be used to enable accounts for last mile financial inclusion, which is a key part of value that we add to the digital public infrastructure use cases. So first off, there are a number of different use cases for last mile financial inclusion for both the public and private sector. We focus primarily around social protection and G2P payments, but governments also must receive inbound payments as well. And then across the ecosystem through various providers, financial inclusion, as well as other use cases like SME, merchant lending, open banking, lending to all sectors can be facilitated by our digital public goods. And throughout the DPI movement, we've been a leader since its early inception. So first off, we were recognized as certified digital public goods and evaluated and certified as members of the financial inclusion community of practice as part of the Digital Public Goods Alliance. We then also helped to incubate and formalize the efforts of OpenG2P, which is now being led by IIITB, to provide an open source beneficiary management system for G2P payments. And in collaboration with Code4Dev, we were founding DPG members of the G2P Connect initiative and active participants as their DPG for DPI efforts to advance sustainability. And then most recently, David led our efforts with the GovStack initiative from ITU and other organizations around implementing and designing the payment building block specification, and then using Payment Hub as a reference implementation around that. But David's going to provide a closer look at that later on. So in terms of the value that we provide for digital public infrastructure, I really want to focus on the key criticality of accounts when you think about payments. So often when individuals think about payments, digital ID comes up as well as the payment rail itself. But even if you have a strong digital ID and you have a strong payment system in place, if there aren't functional accounts that individuals who need these payments have access to, they can't participate in these systems. And so where we come into play is providing both that core banking platform to provide a modern functional transactional account, as well as an orchestration layer to connect into those digital payment rails. So a key player in this mission is the non-bank financial institutions. These take many forms. They could be MFIs, SACCOs, credit unions, cooperatives, but they act as that trusted last mile delivery channel to help reach those in need of financial inclusion the most. But for these institutions, they face a barrier around not having access or the systems to provide these accounts. You can go to the next slide, David. And so a number of barriers exist which prevent them from having the ability to offer these accounts. First off, most of the systems out there to manage these accounts are either quite costly or built on legacy technologies, or if they're available, they don't have the capability to operate 24/7 to connect into real-time, instant, inclusive payment systems. So at the end of the day, it's quite costly and disconnected for these institutions to try to operate. And so our solution comes in to change that. So our solution is highly connected, built on modern web-based technologies. It's built on modern standards and driven through open APIs. And then it enables this ecosystem-based approach to collaboration to drive down the overall cost and increase the rate of innovation, helping to remove technology as a barrier to these accounts. And so one way in which we envision delivering these accounts to these last mile non-bank financial institutions is through shared infrastructure. So by delivering our digital public goods in the cloud, leveraging the economies of scale there, we can provide both the core banking Mifos X as well as payment hub to these last mile financial institutions in the cloud, such that they can have access to modern accounts to then connect into the digital payment rails within the country. And then we can also deploy our payment hub at the level of the government for them to orchestrate their payment flows, both inbound and outbound. So that's our vision of shared infrastructure, which we'll talk a little bit more on the subsequent slides. So we envision that by delivering the core banking and payment orchestration as a hosted service in the cloud, we can provide a foundational platform to enable widespread digital transformation at a much lower cost. So first off, you start with digitization of the systems itself. Then that enables digital transformation by connecting into modern payment rails and offering self-service channels like mobile banking. And then that also will enable these last mile financial institutions to be able to participate in more AI, machine learning, data science for good initiatives, comply with reporting standards, and have access to the technologies to combat fraud and risk when that's becoming ever more prevalent with these digital channels. And so we envision that we have this as a hosted service, working with nationwide networks of credit unions or SACCOs, or working with the government to deliver this at scale. And then we work collectively with the local ecosystem to do this in a sustainable and scalable manner. And then our vision for this represents a number of different aspects across this pyramid that we'll show on the next slide here. So first off, this is rooted in adoption and building on open source digital public goods like Mifos. And then we need enabling policies at the government level to ensure this adoption. And then at the middle level, in terms of distribution and innovation, we want to work with those ecosystem players like associations. And then we have to work hand in hand with local system integrators who can actually deliver the solution on the ground. And then lastly, this will result in impact locally. So improving the financial health of those individuals at the institutions, but also by building solutions that are supported locally, enabling that monetary value to cycle back through the local economies. So this is something that we're piloting right now in Trinidad and Tobago. And there's also a good example of it occurring in Mexico with some of our innovation partners that are using the innovative technology stack down there. So you can go to the next slide, David. So that's how we deliver this all together. So through the Mifos Gazelle, which David will speak about, that couples together the delivery of these digital public goods, which enable access to core banking, these modern orchestration rails for moving money, and the reference applications that customers can use to interact with these functional accounts that they now have in their hands. So I'm going to provide a brief look at a case study from the private sector, and then Victor is going to give a much closer look at a powerful case study from the public sector in adopting our digital public goods to enable widespread financial inclusion across Mexico. So I'm going to provide a high-level look at what we have codenamed the Pepper Soup Project. This is a multi-year project in which we've worked with a global fintech providing payments as well as lending services worldwide. So we worked with them when they faced challenges in scaling their system in one of their largest markets. And so throughout the time in which we've worked with them, we helped to re-platform their legacy Temenos system, which they were using to manage their lending services. And in doing that, we're helping them save hundreds of millions of dollars in licensing costs over a number of years. We've improved the performance of the system, and we've also enabled them to innovate more rapidly by being able to respond to regulatory changes and have control over their tech stack to grow in the markets that they're operating in. You can go to the next slide, David. So we started out with this project, and this is a good example of how a private sector player can contribute actively back to the open source ecosystem. So we first started out with a quick 3-month proof of concept to ensure that we could reach their scalability targets. And once we achieved that, we embarked on a year-long project to build those capabilities out into the open source, which they then integrated and adopted into their downstream solutions. And this was to enable the rollout of their buy now, pay later product in one large country that they had. And then we also worked with them separately to build another solution to help them externalize some of the assets they were lending out. And then our second project was another year-long project where we then worked to introduce additional functional and technical capabilities into the upstream open source core banking system, such that they could roll out a new lending solution to 6 different markets, including the US. And then most recently, we spent time working with them to migrate over their longer-term interest-bearing installment lending products, as well as helping them migrate their existing loans. And all of the capabilities that we've built for them have gone back into the open source upstream code base, and we now have a powerful reference of a global company that's opening up hundreds of thousands new loan accounts each day on a platform powered by our open source digital public good. And then this is just a few of the scalability enhancements that we introduced in the open source to help them meet their requirements. So we introduced a new module to do those end-of-day business processes. We introduced a real-time business event framework such that they could stream the events into their accounting system to meet regulatory requirements at the end of the day. And then they needed to deliver all this in real time to their downstream system. So they had to meet stringent requirements, which we were able to achieve through these technical enhancements. Yeah, so I'm now going to pass it on to Victor, who's going to talk about the case study and work that he did with Financiera para el Bienestar. So thank you. On to you, Victor.
Gracias, Ed. Muy buenas tardes a todos y gracias por esta invitación. Vamos a platicar sobre el caso de éxito que hemos tenido aquí en México y que sigue evolucionando porque ese es un proyecto en este momento transeccional. Esto es las administraciones federales que ocurren en México. Nosotros hemos tenido un reconocimiento por la entrega de productos de crédito de manera directa del gobierno a la población mexicana bajo políticas públicas, que en este caso es la reducción de la pobreza y bajo el esquema de primero los pobres. Entonces, lo que nosotros estamos realizando aquí en México es generar toda una alianza entre instituciones tecnológicas, como lo es Infotec. Infotec es la fábrica de desarrollo de software a nivel federal, y a través de instituciones de la banca de desarrollo, como es Financiera para el Bienestar, que se encarga de administrar todos los créditos que se han dado a través de las administraciones. Hoy en día, este sistema administra casi 2 millones de créditos que se han entregado de manera directa hacia la población, y en el siguiente año se está considerando también entregar más de 100,000 créditos que corresponden a una bolsa de cerca de 50 millones de dólares hacia la población para sus proyectos productivos, y todo esto tiene un enfoque totalmente digitalizable. ¿Por qué? Porque desde el momento en que se está haciendo la originación del apoyo o el crédito, es a través de una aplicación que puede ser una aplicación móvil o una aplicación web, donde el ciudadano ingresa su información general, se contrasta con los sistemas de identidad que contamos aquí en México, como pueden ser los sistemas fiscales o los sistemas electorales para poder hacer incluso una comparación biométrica de las solicitudes o las personas que están haciendo la solicitud. Y también esto reduce en gran medida los esquemas que previamente eran muy complejos para los usuarios de ir a una oficina, de tener una asistencia que pudiera tener una causa de corrupción, o bien también en ocasiones habían duplicidad de solicitudes. Al estar centralizado y digitalizado, todo el proceso desde que se solicita y se entrega al beneficiario se encuentra digitalizado, y también hacemos uso de la infraestructura que ya cuenta la financiera. Son más de 1,700 sucursales a través de todo el país, y también nosotros estamos participando durante todo este proceso en la administración para conciliar también los pagos, porque es una parte importante contar con los reembolsos que permitan a la gente tener un siguiente ciclo de crédito. También es importante mencionar que a través del uso del open source ha permitido al gobierno federal enfocarse en los beneficios que tienen hacia la población, en lugar de estar adquiriendo licencias o adquiriendo capacitación o realizando modificaciones a los sistemas que no se adaptan a la regulación local o bien a la operación de las instituciones. También los siguientes proyectos que tenemos van a estar enfocados en el fondeo de productos artesanales o proyectos artesanales, que lo que buscamos es que tengan una visibilidad las personas de las comunidades nativas de México hacia toda la República Mexicana. Y por otro lado, también se está buscando un modelo de crédito hacia los autos electrificados, que nos va a permitir también cumplir con metas que son la reducción de emisiones de carbono. Y esto es a través de diversos ministerios o secretarías aquí en México, secretarías de Economía, secretarías de Energía, donde se realizan los convenios para que podamos, entre las diversas instituciones, coordinarlos y poder establecer los mecanismos de operación de cada uno de estos créditos. Muy bien, aquí vamos a mencionar esta implementación que a través de Infotec se realizó. Infotec es un centro de investigación público del gobierno federal que tiene dentro de sus atribuciones la transformación digital de México a través de la investigación, la innovación, la enseñanza y capacitación académica, así como el enfoque hacia los productos y servicios de tecnologías de la información, que también está enfocado no solo al sector público, sino también puede ofrecer servicios al sector privado. Y sobre todo lo que tenemos dentro de nuestros alcances es la inclusión financiera y digital de toda la población. Entonces, vamos a través de esta institución lograr operar este tipo de mecanismos para su operación y despliegue. Aquí que es importante mencionar que Infotec, como es un centro público y con Mifos, tienen unos objetivos comunes que tienen que ver con la inclusión financiera y social, así como permitir la accesibilidad de los servicios financieros a las personas más pobres, que como lo mencionamos, ese es el enfoque de las políticas públicas que hemos tenido para llevar bienestar a la población, y todo que esté soportado por código abierto que nos permita realizar las modificaciones y adecuaciones necesarias a los sistemas y a nuestra realidad. Además, a través de esta colaboración que hemos tenido con Mifos e Infotec, nos ha permitido incrementar las capacidades tecnológicas de la institución y de las instituciones en las que participamos, porque el conocimiento lo distribuimos a través de todos los stakeholders o participantes del proyecto para que aumenten sus capacidades funcionales, competitivas, y también sea un código que permita a las instituciones reducir la reducción de costos para sus diversas áreas tecnológicas y operativas. Entonces, nuestros objetivos, como ya lo mencionamos, han sido el contribuir a la inclusión financiera de la población en México, habilitar a las instituciones de la banca de desarrollo a través de un core de código abierto para que puedan ofrecer los servicios financieros de una manera más efectiva y más eficiente. También que sean escalables, porque nuestras soluciones al momento de desplegarlas hacia el público en general pueden ir desde un par de millones de créditos, o bien pueden escalar hasta más de 20 millones, que bueno, ese es otro caso de uso que le hemos dado al core bancario, que es para la dispersión de los programas sociales. Y por otro lado, también es importante mencionar que la arquitectura tecnológica está basada en contenedores y microservicios. Esto es importante porque nos permite hacer un despliegue en nuestros propios centros de datos, o bien en caso de requerir infraestructura adicional, lo podemos escalar hacia nubes públicas. Este es un esquema, una arquitectura de alto nivel, como hemos conectado el sistema Mifos a través de los diversos fuentes de información con los que contamos en México, el Registro Nacional de Población, para poder identificar a través de la cédula de identidad, o bueno, aquí es la clave única de registro de población, el servicio de administración tributaria para todos los elementos fiscales que requerimos corroborar y también generar, que es el SAT. También el Instituto Nacional Electoral, que es otra institución federal que permite contrastar datos biométricos, como es la fotografía o la huella digital que se encuentra en nuestra credencial de elector, así como una institución de información crediticia, que en este caso es el Buró de Crédito, que nos permite conocer cuál ha sido el historial, en caso de que así lo requiera, de la persona solicitante. También tenemos los reguladores, que es el Banco Central, el Banco de México, la Comisión Nacional Bancaria y de Valores, que es la que nos entrega todas las políticas que debemos de cumplir para ofrecer los servicios en línea, así como los reportes regulatorios y contables que tenemos que entregar. La CONDUCEF, que es una comisión que se encarga de velar por todos los derechos de los usuarios financieros, que también tenemos que otorgar claramente sus estados de cuenta, sus contratos, sus calendarios de pago hacia todos los solicitantes de créditos y de apoyos. Y la Secretaría de Hacienda y Crédito Público, que bueno, esta es la que a través de la unidad de la Banca de Desarrollo ofrece los servicios financieros a la población mexicana. También la banca digital, que tiene que ver con asistentes digitales que permiten y facilitan a las personas la contratación de los productos, o bien la aclaración de dudas que puedan tener con la operación, como pueden ser los pagos o los puntos donde ellos pueden hacer el cobro de su apoyo o crédito. Una banca móvil, también una banca por internet, una wallet, así como APIs de interoperabilidad con otras instituciones que nos permiten exponer información, no solo consumirla, sino también exponer información, y que permite también conocer cuál ha sido el desempeño de la persona con respecto al pago de los apoyos o los créditos que ha dado el gobierno federal. También las diversas áreas que puede tener de una manera funcional la institución se encuentran las áreas de financieras, de tesorería, de administración de efectivo, de educación financiera, de contabilidad, de auditoría, de inteligencia de negocio. La parte de auditoría yo la quiero resaltar porque tenemos auditorías internas, auditorías externas y una auditoría federal que asegura que todos los recursos que se han ejercido para la implementación de estas soluciones sean y correspondan a lo que se le ha entregado a las instituciones y a la población en general. Esto permite también asegurar que nuestros productos tecnológicos tienen un cumplimiento no solo regulatorio, sino también de una eficiencia presupuestal. Y por otro lado, también tenemos los diversos módulos que se han ido habilitando para la población, así como los usuarios de las instituciones, que tienen que ver con aplicaciones de autoservicio, cuentas de ahorro, cuentas de crédito, La seguridad ha sido un elemento fundamental aquí en México para ser implementado. Tenemos un capítulo dedicado nada más a seguridad en la industria financiera a través de una circular aquí en México, que la circular única de bancos. También tenemos una base de datos electrónica que nos permite también identificar los patrones que tienen las personas al momento de solicitar créditos, realizar pagos, y esto nos permite mejorar los servicios financieros a la población, porque ya contamos con una data histórica que nos permite realizar esta inteligencia del negocio. La organización también nos permite establecer diversos mecanismos para poder trabajar con esta data en sucursales y en diversas instituciones. Estos son los escenarios en donde hemos hecho los despliegues. Uno tiene que ver con más de 1,700 sucursales físicas, que es la que acabo de mencionar, financiera para el bienestar. Tiene más de 2.7 millones de registros históricos de créditos, 10 millones de transacciones de reembolsos, y también cuando los sacamos nuevas convocatorias, en una sola semana operativa tenemos más de 50,000 solicitudes de crédito. Y el escenario 2 son, que todavía no es público, son más de 2,000 sucursales en el país, más de 20 millones de usuarios, 4 millones de transacciones en tarjetas de crédito en los horarios picos, y son 5,000 transacciones por segundo interbancarias. Y bueno, en este caso se han hecho más de 150,000 solicitudes en una sola semana. Esta es alguna de las arquitecturas de alto nivel que se han realizado. Esta es una muestra de la aplicación móvil que tenemos con respecto a incluso cómo pueden solicitar los pagos en tiendas de conveniencia a través de códigos QR. Este es un mecanismo que permite distribuir la carga operativa en las sucursales.
Okay, thanks, Victor. I'm going to provide a closer look at the Mifos X core banking platform. Victor's going to give a quick demo, and then David's going to shift the focus to payments. So I noted earlier that we're built on a modern architecture, so we follow this MOC approach. So first off, the M stands for microservices, so having these independently scalable components that developers and deployers can individually work upon. Being API first, so everything's exposed via RESTful Open API. Cloud native, so being able to scale effectively in the cloud. And then this headless approach where we have the back end cleanly separated from the front end, such that the ecosystem can come and build front end solutions on top of the back end. And then a closer look at the technical components underlying Mifos X. At the heart is a Spring Boot Java-based application. And then we use Kafka for messaging in those event streams. Eclipse Link is there as the Hibernate JPA or the JPA layer. And then as I noted earlier, we use Spring Batch for our batch jobs. We support a number of different relational databases, so Postgres as well as MySQL and MariaDB. And then the front-end staff UI is built on Angular. And then we use Kotlin for its multi-platform capabilities for our mobile applications, use Cucumber for our behavioral-driven tests, and then Gradle for our dependency management, and Jenkins for our continuous integration, continuous development pipelines. So next, I'm going to take a closer look at the functional components within Mifos X. So as noted earlier, it has all the capabilities you need to deliver financial services through any institution. So we offer the capabilities to manage whatever information is necessary at the customer, including uploading KYC documents. We have a powerful product configuration engine to manage a wide variety of lending, as well as deposit and equity-based accounts. So these could be a wide range of loan accounts for groups or individuals, savings and term deposits, as well as share and equity accounts. And then we have all the underlying capabilities around the ledger to support those financial and transactions being mapped back to the general ledger, all the necessary reporting, as well as a number of different tools for managing delinquency, helping to ensure internal audit, security, and compliance. And then we also maintain our Mifos X field operations app for those financial institutions that have digital operations in which they need to go out into the field. And then around digitization, David's going to talk more about the payment orchestration. Yeah, and once again, I come back to this core versus edge approach, where at the core, we have these common primitives or common components and building blocks to enable the delivery of all these functional accounts. And then on the ancillary edge solutions, this is where if you're doing lending, you might need decisioning or credit risk assessment or onboarding. You might be offering other channels for your customers. You might be providing additional fraud and risk mechanisms, but there's a wide variety of solutions needed to deliver end-to-end financial services, and we provide the APIs in which to connect at that level. So I think next up, Victor is going to give a closer, or I'm going to talk a little bit about our mobile apps, and then I'll pass it back to Victor. So for our customers, we maintain 2 key mobile apps, and they're both built on the Kotlin multi-platform development framework. So we maintain both a mobile banking app, which is for self-service operations. So if you're a financial institution that offers individuals accounts, they can use that to manage their accounts and do transactions. And we also offer Mifos Pay, which is a reference mobile wallet app, which a government could offer, a private sector institution could offer. And the benefits on building on Kotlin as one single code base can be deployed across multiple platforms, whether that's Android, iOS, the desktop, or web. And then we can also share UI components across these applications. And then we deliver this via our Mifos X client. So all the APIs from the backend come securely through to these front-end channels, and these can all be rapidly deployed. But now I'm going to pass it on to Victor, who's going to share some of the web app that CB was using for these lending operations. And I think some of the self-service lending loan origination processes through the web as well. So back on to Victor.
Esta es la aplicación que hemos construido para la financiera para el bienestar. Como lo comenté, tiene un enfoque, sobre todo, que pueda ser accesible para la población en general. Tratamos que sea una aplicación muy sencilla de ocupar para la población que ha sido principalmente diseñada, donde a través de la originación de la aplicación web, ellos van a ingresar sus credenciales, pueden registrarse. Aquí establecen sus datos iniciales, así como una identidad nacional, que es la clave única de registro de población, que es confrontada para poder asegurar que al menos esta persona se encuentra registrada, y posteriormente durante el proceso de originación, que es el que voy a presentar en este momento, se establece o se van cargando los documentos que son necesarios para la solicitud de crédito. Todo esto es de una manera digital, evitando sobre todo la duplicidad de trámites que tengan que realizar las personas. Aquí, por ejemplo, es muy sencilla la aplicación de solicitud de crédito. En este caso es un apoyo, así se ha denominado. Estos son diversos créditos que están disponibles o pueden estar disponibles dentro de una plataforma. Aquí se establecen cuáles son los montos, la identificación oficial que está proporcionando la persona. Puede ser la credencial de lector, el pasaporte, una cédula profesional, o en caso de que sea un adulto mayor, aquí en México también tienen ellos credenciales particulares, que es INAPAM. El número de identificación, que en este caso es la identificación fiscal. El estado civil, estos son datos socioeconómicos porque le interesan a las instituciones conocer cuál es la población y datos sociodemográficos que están atendiendo, sus niveles de estudio, cuánto tiempo tienen viviendo en su comunidad, los dependientes económicos y si han sido partícipes de un programa social con anterioridad. Esto principalmente les permite a las personas poder conocer si han sido beneficiarias anteriormente, y si no, también aquí tenemos ya diversos mecanismos que nos permiten verificar que hayan sido o no beneficiarios. El sistema también nos permite conocer cuáles son los datos que faltan o son requeridos para cargar y poder continuar con la solicitud. Toda esta información, es también un poquito más larga de llenar con respecto al domicilio y un plan de negocios que se requiere, pero vamos a visualizar también lo que es el sistema de backend, que nos permite también administrar los créditos. En este caso, por ejemplo, uno de los beneficiarios, y que aquí son de las modificaciones que se han hecho hacia el core bancario, es la privacidad de la información. Lo vamos a ver posteriormente en el demo, pero aquí tratamos que toda la información sea la mínima disponible acorde a las facultades que tiene el operador del sistema. Puede ser un administrador del sistema, un cajero, un revisor, un servidor público que está haciendo una auditoría, pero son las mínimas. En este caso es uno de los beneficiarios que a través del sistema de originación se ha enrolado y hemos capturado los datos. Los datos también pueden ser visualizados. Esta parte de visualización es importante porque nos permite, en su caso, también tener un soporte documental para las auditorías a las que somos sujetos como instituciones. Y por otro lado, también es el elemento digital que nos asegura que la persona es quien dice ser, es parte del proceso de conoce a tu cliente y también tiene que ver con mecanismos de prevención de lavado de dinero y financiamiento al terrorismo. Pues digamos, por sus siglas en inglés es el KYC o el AML. Y de esta manera también el cliente o la persona, en este caso le llamamos beneficiario. Esa es otra de las modificaciones que se hacen a los sistemas, no son clientes, son beneficiarios. Cuenta con un expediente electrónico que ha sido integrado de diversas fuentes de confianza y que han sido también validadas. También aquí contamos ya con su cuenta de crédito y en caso de que tuvieran algunos otros créditos previamente solicitados, los podemos visualizar. Y lo que es importante para el ciudadano es conocer cuáles son sus calendarios de pago, porque le van a permitir también establecer esa capacidad de pago y por otro lado es una transparencia que se requiere entregar a través del estado de cuenta hacia los ciudadanos y por otro lado también se pueden ir integrando ciertos documentos al crédito dependiendo cuál es el sustento de la actividad económica a la cual él está solicitándola. Y cabe resaltar que estos créditos son de tasa cero. Al ser tasa cero, tienen una ventaja sobre cualquier otro crédito comercial y está enfocado, como lo mencioné, a aquellas poblaciones más vulnerables, mujeres indígenas, actividades que tienen que ver con, por ejemplo, la recuperación del COVID o bien situaciones de recuperación económica después de desastres naturales. En este caso también se han dado atención de créditos o apoyos económicos a negocios que fueron impactados por huracanes aquí en México, como lo fue Otis en 2023. Son algunos de los casos de uso para los cuales se ha ocupado la plataforma y que a través de estos sistemas digitales podemos generar cierta información o modelado de la información con respecto a los reportes que se requieren para la sociedad. Digo, son reportes contables, reportes con respecto a cuáles han sido los mejores beneficiarios de los créditos, cuál es su comportamiento también de reembolsos. Y cabe mencionar que también esto lo podemos hacer, bueno, los desembolsos los podemos hacer de una manera masiva. Digo, por ejemplo, si tenemos 50,000 sucursales, los desembolsos los podemos realizar de una manera masiva hacia otras instituciones financieras o hacia donde el beneficiario nos indicó. O en caso de que no haya algún mecanismo, se pueden entregar en sucursal a través de una orden de pago. Este es, digamos, un viaje muy rápido con respecto a toda la funcionalidad que tiene el sistema. Para más detalle, a través de Mifos pueden encontrar la información y solicitar más detalle al respecto. No solo es la parte operativa, sino la parte contable y regulatoria que tiene el sistema. Y bueno, continuamos también con la presentación.
So I will now talk a little bit more about Payment Hub, one of the other DPGs that Mifos manages. And this DPG is for orchestration for payments. So what does Payment Hub do? Well, it's got a number of different functionalities, very similar in its architecture to what we've already explored with Mifos X. So it's built around an architecture that's highly scalable, highly replicable. We make sure that it's got all the right integrations that's needed, and we use a connectorized approach. So it's very similar to that core and edge approach that Ed was taking us through earlier on Mifos X. We have connectors within Payment Hub to access from the core of the orchestration engine, whether it be to different payment schemas, whether it be to channel connectors, or whether it be to core banking systems such as Mifos X or other core banking systems. We also have a operational interface, which enables people to actually see what is going on at the administration level. And we provide analytics integration to be able to look at the analytics of the transactions that are flowing through the orchestration engine. In terms of orchestration, we use BPMN workflows as being a highly powerful way to adapt the orchestration engine to many different use cases without having to edit the core. So one of the things I wanted to talk about was how we've applied this. As you said, there's two different modes this can be applied in. One is for digital financial service providers to actually use it as their participation tool to be able to connect to different payment rails. But also it can be used by the government. And one of the pieces of work I'd worked on with Mifos when I first joined about 2 years ago was working with GovStack, which is a collaboration between the ITU, the government of Estonia, the government of Germany, as well as Dial, who have driven out a building blocks approach to be able to enable governments to digitize their transactions in a non-siloed approach. And one element of that is what we refer to as the payments building block, which focuses on the payment infrastructure needed so that the government systems and the government sources of record can actually talk to payment systems. So within that work, what did we do? Well, we took our standard architecture that we have for Payment Hub, and you'll see we used a lot of the same tools that we saw within Mifos X. So we use Cucumber for testing, we use CB for orchestration, we use MySQL, we use Kibana, etc. And we use Kong for our API gateway. But through that API gateway, we enable it to actually talk to the other building blocks of the GovStack system. So they would be the systems such as the beneficiary management system, such as the national ID system, all via a secure interface. So what does it look like in reality, this architecture? So what we show here in the grey box is Payment Hub EE acting as that orchestration for the government. Now, as we said, it could also act as part of the payer infrastructure. So in the government sense, that would typically be interfacing between, say, a central bank entity and the payment rails. It can interface across to other schemes, such as Multiloop acting as a switch, or it could be used within the payee infrastructure by the DFSPs to participate in the payment rails. When we did the work within GovStack, we focused on two use cases initially, that of government to person payments and that of person to government payments. And the work we did within Payment Hub to enable those use cases was the definition of something called the ID account mapper, bulk disbursement functionalities, enabling vouchers to be a valid payment method, as well as a lot of integration needed for P2G and updating the UI to cope with it. So what does the ID account mapper do? Basically, it's very simple. What it means is it's storing within the payments building block within Payment Hub EE the financial details for each of the beneficiaries for the government. So it holds the functional ID, so that's the recognized ID handed out by the beneficiary management system, and maps against that a financial address and a payment modality. So it could be mobile banking and a mobile telephone number for some users. It could be vouchers for others. It could be a normal IBAN and bank account. But each beneficiary of each program will have a unique unique functional ID, which would then map back to their foundational ID, such as their national identity. The enhancements we made to the bulk processor was very much about enabling it to take a very large list of instructions from the government in terms of, I need to pay this beneficiary this amount of money within a program, and maybe take, say 50, 100,000 transactions in one go in that, but then be able to break that down, do that mapping through the ID account map we've talked about to get the actual financial institution addresses, and then rebatch up those transactions to a suitable level that can be sent out to each financial institution. So it can split it not only by the financial institution the transactions need to go to, it can also rebatch it in sizes that those financial institutions can cope with. So if we know there's a financial institution that can only cope with a smaller transactions file at any point in time, that logic can be built into the payments building block to enable that. We also enabled what we call a voucher engine, because we realized that where the system may be implemented, they may not even have access to mobile money or traditional bank accounts. And therefore, vouchers might be a very valid way of making sure the end user can get the benefit of those G2P payments. So we've enabled a voucher management system that can generate the file necessarily to either go to a provider that may generate QR codes or paper vouchers to be handed out to the end users, so they can still fully participate in the government beneficiary scheme. And as I said, we also had to do quite extensive work around the P2G module, the person to government module. The foundation of this was creating a module where each of the billers, which would be a government department, for example, would have a unique ID that could be tagged to the reference number. So when the payment comes through from the end payment system, it can be tracked back and that data passed to the government billing entity so that they know that the bill has been settled. And as I say, we upgraded the user interface as well. So we put full user management on the front end with Keycloak to make sure different types of users can get in and be validated for different purposes into the UI. We've also got 3 main screens that we can go to. The account management, which is the ID account mapper. So here you can see it showing a beneficiary and their account. The ability to create vouchers. So here you can see a batch of vouchers and their status. You can also upload a series of vouchers, check they're correct with value and send them out. And then we've got the main batch transactions, which can show the batches as received in, the sub batches that were generated out, and then down to the individual transaction level below. So as I said, we do this through a core edge approach, just like Ed's talked about with Mifos X. So in the center, we've got the core orchestration engine. We have options that are powered by ZB and Netflix Conductor, and we also are looking to abstract that orchestration engine in our architecture in the future so that many different orchestration methods could be put in the middle. We also have connectors for services at the top end, whether that be to ATM, POS, branch front-end applications, for example. We have connectors to payment schemes and payment rails. We have connectors to account management schemes and even connectors to be able to, in the future, connect to fraud and risk management systems to detect that transactions are going through correctly. I won't go into detail on these, but all of these are available in the reference sites that you had QR codes for earlier. But we've built a number of use cases workflows. So this is for a beneficiary to onboard. This is to be able to do a bulk disbursement, such as salary disbursement to government workers, but it could equally be the ability to push funds out on a maternity benefits scheme, for example. And what we can do is look at how that flows through the system. So if we take the approach of the government having implemented this GovStack approach and making payments to its beneficiaries, this area we show here in orange is the government entities. So we've got the ID building block, the registration building block. We've got what they call the information mediator building block. So that checks that securely all the building blocks are talking to each other and information is passed in a secure manner. And then we have the payments building block, which is implemented by Payment Hub EA. What, for the purposes of Flow, what we'll do is assume that all the beneficiaries have already been configured and registered, and all the different building blocks will map to each other. So if we set up a program for dispersing out to beneficiaries, and in this case, we'll take maternity payments as an example. What this will first be done is linked to a payer account within, say, the central bank, which the funds are going to be sent from to the beneficiaries. As the individuals are registered into the program, they'd be onboarded, first of all, in that registration building blocks. That would be the application that the person registering people for the benefit payment would initiate the people in. That would communicate via that information mediator to the ID building block to check that the person is who they say they are. And it would create that functional ID. So that is this person on this program ID that was then used for all the mappings in the future. Once they've got that functional ID, we will request their details, how they want to be paid that beneficiary payment. So is it a bank account, is it a mobile account, is it a voucher, or is it an alias for another method? And that is sent to the payments building block. So that's the only time the payments information is ever outside of the payments building block in the government systems. And it's passed through typically via iframe type technologies. It's registered in the ID account mapper, so we put that mapping in. And of course, those details can be updated by the beneficiary afterwards. We have update methods to do that. So when it comes to make a payment from that maternity benefits program, the registration building block or the government application will generate a large bulk file of functional IDs and the amounts of payments to be made. That will be passed to the payments building block. And within that, it will do that mapping exercise, we say, of this ID actually was this account number, and actually create a new set of transactions with actual financial addresses to go to. As part of that, it will also, as we said, make them up into suitable size batches so that the payer DFSPs can actually handle it. These instructions are then sent to the payer DFSP, the central bank in this instance, to make the payment to the end beneficiaries. And any intermediate infrastructure could also be facilitated. As we also said, we've done P2G flows. So this is to enable paying of bills such as maybe tax bills, maybe it's paying fines to the government, maybe it's paying for services such as refuse collection for businesses, etc. And what happens here is and the originator obviously is the payer. When they make the request to actually pay the bill, they check the bill is there in the table via the payments building block. That will confirm the bill is still valid, it's not already been paid. When the payment reference ID has been sent back, that will be then marked as paid so that they can't pay it again or overpay. The other exciting product I wanted to be able to share with you is Mifos Gazelle, and this is one of the newest products we've got within Mifos. So Mifos Gazelle is what we call DPI as a package solution tool. What it does is enable the easy and rapid deployment of multiple DPGs into the environment with a single command. Now, at the moment, this is purely focused for demo, proof of concept and prototyping. And we see its real value at this stage in being able to enable those conversations about, well, how could we use these DPGs together to enable something and do rapid prototyping and be able to have that conversation. So key to that was actually cutting down dramatically the installation time and the experience needed to be able to do deployments. If you want to do that prototyping, you don't want to have to wait 4 or 5 weeks and get multiple parties in putting in all their solutions. The repo is that here, and we'll probably share that a bit later as we go through repos. The history of Mifos Gazelle, it's been about 2 years in the making. It started out as a concept that was shared between Moduloop and Mifos. And we had a GSOC student participate in 2003 that set the underlying integrations that proved this was possible. Last year, we were able to get 4 interns working on it to actually really refine and enhance the offering, which meant that in Q4, we could actually properly launch it as a product that can be used, focused on those end-to-end demonstrations and providing a method that doesn't reinvent and actually encourages DPGs to collaborate together to get this out there. So what do we do in release 1? So currently it installs in release 1 3 components: Mifos Payment Hub EE, the payment orchestration; Mifos X, including the FinRack backend for core banking, and VNext Beta payment switch. It can run on a 32 gigabyte VM in a Kubernetes cluster, but more importantly, it can fully install in 15 minutes. And I won't bore you for 15 minutes of actually doing it. But what we will do is, if you want to go to the website, you can see the full version. This is speeded up to be about 2 minutes. It clones the repo, first of all, into the space that was going to be deployed. So there's the repo having been cloned. Then we will check that the files have all been transferred, and we do a single line install, which is a single sudo run.sh command. It has a number of different options that can do it. So first of all, it will check the operating system and the Kubernetes distribution and make sure that is correct. And then it will install K3s within that environment and install the Helm and Nginx controls. Now installing the Kubernetes tools and adding the Helm repos for each of the products. And then it's configuring the ingress charts and doing the checks. So what it'll do next is deploy the infrastructure. So it does that by creating the namespace, updating the dependencies, and deploying the infrastructure Helm beneath it. So there's the infrastructure now set up, and what it's now doing is installing the vNext beta switch. So it's creating the namespace, cloning the repo, and then checking that it's been configured correctly. So you can see how quick that was to do there. And as I say, that's been speeded up about 10 times. It's now deploying Payment Hub EE. This is the longest part of the installation. So the similar process, it creates the namespace, clones the repo, shares the secrets, and then does the installation. What we're working on at the moment for our next version of Mifos Gazelle is to actually reduce the time further of this step within Payment Hub. Now, as you can see, it's installing Mifos X. So again, it creates a namespace, clones the repo, applies the Kubernetes manifests, and then completes the manifests. So what we can now do is go in and check that those pods and services have been configured and are operational. So we've gone in using K9S, and we can see all the services here that are running and operational in the Kubernetes cluster where we've deployed all the DPGs to. I'll just go around and do it again. Okay, so what have we got coming up to the next release? This will be out very soon. So we've improved the installation process, so it'll be even quicker. We found that we've had some issues with the rate limiting that a lot of people have found on Docker Hub recently. So we've removed the reliance on Docker Hub. So if it's not available or the rate limiting's impacted, it can actually still deploy quickly. We're reducing the memory needed to run. We do have a headline figure, but we will announce that as we get nearer to it. But more importantly, we're also including support for ARM processors in the future, rather than just 86 processors, which means you can actually run it on an Apple device or maybe even a Raspberry Pi. So what are we looking for the future? So we will still stay focused around our objectives of being simple installation, so one-line installer. But we're looking to expand much wider the number of DPGs that are included in the roadmap. We're planning to also do much more around end-to-end demos. So not just will it drop the components out into the environment, it will actually give you a number of pre-formed demos that you can run across to see that it's working correctly and be mapped to use cases. Now, one of the key things there is we're starting to talk to other DPGs about being included. And one of the students we've got this year working with us is actually looking at OpenCRVS integration. So what OpenCRVS integration will mean is that we'll have a civil registration system at the front end. And we're able to use that to drive the end-to-end use cases through the payments infrastructure and everything else. A few pointers to more information if you want it. We have a YouTube channel with many more guides, many more videos, many more deep dives technically into how we've done Mifos Gazelle and the approach we're doing. We have the repos. We have an active community developing on Slack as well. And then finally, before I hand back to Victor to look at some of our GitHub repos, What do we use for project management within Mifos? Well, we use Jira more commonly than we use GitHub Issues. We're migrating away from GitHub Issues. Mifosforge.jira.com is our main Jira website. All our projects have their own project space within that, with Kanban boards and integration to GitHub, so you can see the status of the pull requests relative to the tickets. We also have dedicated project workflows, so we can cater for different project needs in terms of review and the cycles they go through in their project management to release. And we also have service desk integration within it as well. So the ability to go for a more friendly front end to raise an issue or a new idea for the product, but that will ultimately result in a Jira ticket in the backend system.
We do have some questions on the chat. Most of them you already answered. So we have one, for example, if I'm a public servant from Dominican Republic or Bolivia, which are public servants connected today, what are the instruments or processes that a public servant should be looking to implement these tools? And would you recommend to start with Mifos Gazelle or other similar product?
Yeah, I would certainly recommend starting with Mifos Gazelle, but maybe I'm a little biased. I think it's a great way to quickly install and be able to explore and play with the environments. But yeah, I think ultimately the best way is to, sort of get hands-on with it, see what you can do. We've got a number of demo and sandbox environments as well that you can apply for access for. So if you want to more easily look at the UI and see what and explore that way, maybe the sandbox environments are better.
Awesome. And we have another one more on the teaching side. Is it possible to have access to the platform for teaching purposes? Alternatively, could we submit apps such as financial calculators, for example, to be integrated into it?
Yes, I think on the teaching side, we've seen a number of educational institutions use the software from the perspective of educating around financial services or just development and contribution to open source in general. So I think it would depend on like what teaching sort of aspect they're looking to use it for, but it could be used as an educational tool in those manners. And then in terms of incorporating or integrating a financial calculator, we always welcome external contributions, but we'd first like to understand, what the contribution would consist of, and then speak with the rest of the community around how you develop it, and then ensure that it could be integrated in a fashion through some of the externalization layers we have around custom modules, working with plugins and whatnot. So that's something where we'd appreciate communication via Slack or a mailing list beforehand. And I think going back to the previous question too, and just like David and myself and Victor as well, we're open to any initial conversations or calls, in addition to utilizing Gazelle for anybody interested in understanding more of how Mifos and the digital public goods could be used for their organization.
Great. And the last one, what measures are in place to ensure 24/7 infrastructure availability?
You want to take that one, Victor?
Ok. Eso es importante, digo, para las instituciones financieras, el tener, por un lado, lo que le llaman alta disponibilidad y resiliencia, porque pueden tener diversos canales que se requieren tener 24/7, como son pagos o bancas electrónicas. Esto principalmente se traduce en requerimientos de infraestructura tecnológica, como pueden tener 2 sitios, 2 regiones en la nube, así como balanceadores de red y réplicas de datos, para que puedan contar con este tipo de soporte 24/7 y con alta disponibilidad. Las configuraciones que se han hecho previamente demuestran que han sido exitosas porque, como lo mencionamos, es parte de los requerimientos normativos y regulatorios.
Muchas gracias a todos nuestros ponentes por compartir su experiencia y perspectiva sobre Mifos. Tuvimos una gran participación y pues el tiempo se nos fue volando otra vez. Para finalizar, los invitamos a nuestro próximo webinar de la red Code4Dev que tendrá lugar el jueves 17 de julio. y contaremos con la participación de invitados especiales de GitHub. Hablaremos sobre las mejores prácticas para usar GitHub en el sector público, incluyendo temas como licencias, gestión de contribuciones, documentación, además de ejemplos más concretos. Muchísimas gracias otra vez. Thank you so much for your participation. Thank you to the speakers, Ed, David, Victor. Thank you so much. And yes, we'll be in touch.